All right, YouTube, once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger War Eagle. In a few days, Auburn will hit the field once again. Spring football is definitely on the horizon. Of course, we have Auburn, who has emerged as a basketball somewhat powerhouse in the making. But like I said before, we're going to see how Auburn performs in the SEC tournament and in the NCAA tournament. But things are definitely going in the right direction for the Auburn Tigers as far as basketball goes. But now as we shift our focus, as always, to football, because that's mainly what I talk about on this particular channel, is Auburn did a decent job of recruiting this year. You talk about even with Gus Malzahn potentially being on the hot seat. I don't think he was ever really on the hot seat, but having a relatively successful season in 2019 has solidified Gus Malzahn's place as head coach for the Auburn Tigers. I don't think Auburn is in the position or is even interested in getting rid of Gus Malzahn anytime soon. He has planted himself as a seasoned football coach in the SEC conference and as well as in the SEC West, has done a relatively good job of keeping Auburn relevant at certain points of the season. So, in my opinion, any talk of Gus Malzahn not being the head coach at Auburn for the foreseeable future really, to me, is asinine and really probably ridiculous at this particular point. Good job of recruiting, number 7 in the country. But when you think about what Auburn is up against on a year in and year out basis, Auburn has got to start a trend to where they're at least top 5. In order to compete from a roster standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, Auburn's got to be top 5, period. And they have to start winning some of those battles between Alabama, Georgia, and LSU and Florida to really begin to consistently compete and to win those, either way kind of games against those particular teams. We look at the 2019 season, and Auburn was basically in every single football game that was played last year, which is a huge deal for the Tigers. I make this synonymous to Auburn in basketball. When Auburn plays against Kentucky now, it's not a situation where Auburn feels inferior or feels that they can't win the basketball game or that they get blown out by a much taller, a much more skilled Kentucky basketball team. Auburn played Kentucky in Rupp Arena with a lot on the line and still had an opportunity to win that particular basketball game. But Bruce Pearl knows that in order to win those games, he has to continue to recruit on a high level. And that's where Gus Malzahn is as a coach. He's been around for a little while. He knows the scope of the SEC, and he understands that outside of coaching, let's take coaching out of the picture. Auburn's got to get the guys there to win on a high level year in and year out and to give themselves an opportunity to compete with those teams like LSU, Georgia, and Texas A&M, Alabama. It's all about the personnel. Because if we look at let's just dissect a position group for the Tigers. If you look at the wide receivers, for example, top to bottom, did Auburn really have what they needed to win the said national championship? I don't think so. I think they had enough to compete. But in order to win championships, it's all about the personnel. So when we look at this 2020 recruiting class, which was a very effective class, lost out on a couple of good football players, but with what Auburn has on hand, has the opportunity to be competitive in 2020. Now, I think very important for us to look at the early enrollees. Why am I big on the early enrollees? Is because, one, it gives you a chance to forecast what the roster is going to look like in 2020. Also, it gives those players the opportunity to get involved with potentially fighting for a spot on the depth chart. Bo Nix and Owen Pappo from 2019, they took advantage of early enrollee status, and guess what? Both wound up being starters. Both were 5-star recruits. Both took advantage of the early enrollee opportunity, performed very well in spring practice, and had relatively good seasons on this past year. So when we look at the 2020 early enrollees for the Auburn Tigers, you have 10 this particular year. You have Tank Bigsby, Zakevious Walker out of Ellaville, Georgia, Kobe Hudson, Ladarius Tennyson, who I think is going to be one of the most versatile players. We're going to figure out where he winds up. He's listed as an athlete. He's listed also as a middle tier, upper 4-star recruit for the Tigers. One of my favorite in this group that I really want to emerge and really want to help with supplementing the losses in the secondary is Chris Thompson. Then you have Romello Height out of Dublin, Georgia, who was actually a commit to Miami, but he flipped his commitment to Auburn. The only thing about Romello Height is that we just don't know his true skill set as far as defense goes. He played mostly defensive end in high school, but he was recruited as an outside linebacker. And when you look at his mechanics and you look at his handwork, that seems the more accurate place to put him. Now, very, very important. Auburn struggled mightily on the offensive line on last season. And out of the 10 early enrollees, you have 3 who are actually offensive linemen. One who is Killian Zirar, who is a junior college transfer listed as a 3-star recruit out of junior college. Then you have Avery Jernigan out of Pierce County in Blackshear, Georgia. And you also have Tate Johnson. Now, just in case you missed it, Auburn does a very good job of recruiting out of Georgia for a lot of reasons. They historically have been successful with recruits out of Georgia. They placed those guys in the league. You look at Carl Lawson, and now you're about to look at Derek Brown right out of Georgia, who will be in the NFL this year. But very importantly is you have 3 of the recruits who are offensive linemen who you look at Auburn last year, they struggled on the offensive line, and to have 3 early enrollees on that offensive line who will be participating in spring football could prove to be a huge deal for the Tigers. Also, when we look at the final guy in this 10-guy set, you have Chalil Garnett. Chalil Garnett is 6'1", 205 pounds out of Lakeland, Florida, is listed as a dual threat quarterback. Why is this important? Auburn lost Joey Gatewood on last year. So that means depth as far as quarterback took a hit once Joey Gatewood left. So really all you had left was Bo Nix, and Cord Sandberg. But now with Chalil Garnett, no, he's not going to compete for the starting position. Bo Nix has solidified that position. But in the SEC and in college football, period, you need to have sustainable depth at that quarterback position. And I think Chalil Garnett is going to help the coaching staff to see where he fits on the depth chart quarterback-wise. Another of my favorite of this group is Kobe Hudson. Kobe Hudson is listed as a wide receiver, but was a dual threat quarterback at Troup County in LaGrange, Georgia. Auburn did an excellent job of recruiting up I-85. Troup County, if you think about it proximity-wise, is just probably closer to Auburn as Athens is for Troup County. When you think about the traffic and you think about how crazy it is to get through Atlanta, Troup County is an easy place for a guy like Kobe Hudson, for his family to come down uninterrupted by traffic. The only traffic that they'll face is once you get down to about exit 62 in Alabama on game day for Auburn. Traffic gets a little bit crazy there, but nothing to, he's really close to home. As a matter of fact, if you think about Alabama, you think about the proximity, there are a lot of people, even from a workforce standpoint, that live in Alabama but actually work in Troup County. Troup County has one of the best employability opportunities when you look at the Kia plant and you look at all the opportunities employment-wise around there. So it's very close in proximity. Really, really looking at, I want you guys to think about it. These 10 recruits and their ability to graduate from high school in a timely manner and actually participate in spring football is going to pay dividends for the Auburn Tigers down the road for a lot of reasons. You can start planning your schedule, your depth chart. You can start piecing together how these newcomers are going to fit into the schematics of this particular year. I think more than anything, this is the most solid recruiting class. This is the most stable recruiting class. And I think from an effective standpoint, you will see the difference this fall. Auburn did a great job. Number 7, I don't believe is enough, but it's a good start considering all. I think Auburn has to have a successful season in 2020 to maybe up that number 7 to a strong 6 or a strong 5 in 2021. But Auburn has definitely made some strides. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast, talking Auburn football. Like the video, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.